Hello everybody! Today I'm doing a video talking about some books that I've read recently. Recently is pushing it. One of them's a book that I was supposed to talk about in the last video I did like this, except I was so amped up about one of the books there that I completely forgot about it, and now a whole bunch of time's gone by and I can't remember it so well. That book was All Systems Red, the first Murderbot novella by Martha Wells. Murderbot is a security robot that has figured out how to deprogram itself. It's still going through the motions of carrying out its job on an expedition, but secretly it's disregarding the system's orders and spending the bulk of its time binge-watching soap operas. This story was okay. I'd heard quite a lot about it, very favorable things. I didn't find it as entertaining as some other readers did, perhaps because I found Murderbot's narrative voice to be so similar to a lot of other narrative voices these days, it just didn't feel distinctive to me. And because it was so short, it felt rushed and a little confusing at the end. There are a few other Murderbot novellas out there, and I think there's a full-length novel either in the works or published already. I'm not sure, though, that I'm interested in continuing the series. Not sure if it's really for me. Next up, I haven't talked about this too much, but I have been slowly making my way through a reread of the Anne of Green Gables series. And I mean slow. It's been at least 2 years. I just recently finished book number 6, Anne of Ingleside. I had mixed feelings about this one. At this point in the series, Ella Montgomery is focusing not so much on Anne as she is on Anne's 6 kids. Each of the Blythe children gets a handful of chapters relating their different adventures and scrapes, usually with some lighthearted commentary from Anne at the end. But overall, Anne is not in it a whole lot. Reading about precocious little kids and their funny way of looking at the world isn't exactly something I get excited about. That's something that I didn't love about Anne of Avonlea, which spent a lot of time focusing on the twins, Dora and Davy. So I did wish that Anne was in it more, and while none of the books have been exactly plot-driven, this one felt especially loose, like it was a collection of short stories that are loosely strung together, with a couple major plot threads woven in that get charmingly resolved by the end. The next one will be Rainbow Valley, which I don't remember much about, but I think that it's more of the same. I think it focuses completely on the kids. So I'm not exactly in a rush to get through that, but I am really excited to reread the last one, Rilla of Ingleside. I really enjoyed that when I was younger, so I'm looking forward to revisiting that one and ending the series on a high note. Another book I read was a Star Wars book. This has nothing to do with Princess Leia at all, but my dad bought these at a yard sale recently, and he really wants me to wear them, so no time like the present. So the Star Wars book that we're talking about is Timothy Zahn's Thrawn Alliances. I'll remind you that I am not a diehard Star Wars fan. I'm not even sure if it would be right to call myself a casual fan, but I make an exception when it comes to Grand Admiral Thrawn, who at some point over the last couple years became my favorite Star Wars character. I think if I were going to cosplay as anyone for this review, it wouldn't be Leia, it would be Thrawn, but blue face paint and red eye contact sounds really uncomfortable, and these aren't bad. I can still hear, so that's good. I loved the old Thrawn trilogy, and I really enjoyed the new Thrawn book, which came out last year, 2 years ago. I've talked about both, and there are links to those videos in the description below. So I was really excited to learn that there was a sequel coming in which Thrawn co-stars opposite Darth Vader. This book, as it turns out, has a little different structure from the others that I've read. There is a parallel timeline going on. It bounces back and forth between past and present. You get to see Thrawn and Vader's opposing leadership styles, which only made me love and appreciate Thrawn more, not just because he doesn't execute his subordinates randomly, but because he's a patient, encouraging commander. And the flashback chapters provide some entertaining interactions between a younger Thrawn and Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala. I was not expecting them to be in this book at all, so that was different. If I'm gonna be honest, there was an awful lot of stuff that I just didn't care about. Like I said, I'm not really that big of a Star Wars fan, and when it gets too Star Wars-y, then I feel like, ugh, this is getting too deep for me. The previous book, Thrawn, didn't have much of anything to do with the Jedi or the Force. I don't think there was a single lightsaber mentioned, and I liked that. It felt more accessible to me. This one did have that stuff, and it was just harder for me to get engaged in the characters, the time period, which I believe is between Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Just the plot and the action, So I came away with mixed feelings, which probably isn't a huge surprise. I'm not the target audience for this. Thrawn himself, though, was as awesome as ever. I love the guy. Guy? Can I call him a guy? He's an alien. I don't know. It's complicated. No complaints there. Ugh, can't wait to take these off. At first, I was thinking, oh, it's really comfortable. But then, you start to get warm. I could wear these when it snows. They'd work very well as earmuffs. Ugh. Also, I finally got to read Joe Kenda's book. I got this for Christmas last year, and I have been eager to read it this entire time, but things never go the way I plan, and it's taken me this long to get to it. But it was well worth the wait. For those of you who don't know, Joe Kenda worked as a policeman and homicide detective in Colorado Springs for 23 years, solving 92% of his 387 cases. Now retired, he is the focus of a successful show on the Investigation Discovery Network called Homicide Hunter, currently airing in its 8th season. On the show, Kenda sits in front of a camera and talks about a case, while a reenactment unfolds in which Kenda is played by actor Carl Marino. Kenda's wise observations and dry sense of humor are the highlights of the show, and several of his catchphrases, delivered with a perfect deadpan expression, have become very popular among fans of the show. Reading his book, which is titled I Will Find You, Solving Killer Cases from My Life Fighting Crime, is just like sitting down and listening to him talk. He describes how he became a detective, some of his worst cases, which were too real for television, how he balanced being a cop with being a father and a husband, how his nightmarish career took a toll on him, and how he unexpectedly became a TV star. I am kind of a squeamish person, and some of the details of these crimes were a little too grisly for me, especially when I was trying to eat while reading. Unlike on TV, these stories are not censored, and Kenda doesn't spare the details. He also doesn't censor his own language, so things get pretty real. Some of these stories are funny, some of them are tragic, some of them, far too many of them, are disturbing. What I really appreciate about Kenda, though, and this goes beyond his quirky, offbeat sense of humor, is how deeply he cared about the victims, and how he was always determined to make sure that the bad guys were thrown in jail. Since I have become a fan of the show over the last couple years, I really enjoyed getting to know more about him. I recommend reading the book if you're a fan of the show, and if you're not familiar with the show, I do recommend checking it out. Homicide Hunter. It is currently airing new episodes every Wednesday at 10 p.m., and usually they play a mini marathon of sorts on Wednesday afternoons starting at 4 p.m., I think. So that's a good way to catch up on old episodes. The last book I'm going to talk about today is another one I got for Christmas. It's Crimson Roses by Grace Livingston Hill. Grace Livingston Hill was a very prolific writer, but I don't think I've ever read anything else by her. This is kind of a rags-to-riches Christian romance written in the 1920s about a girl who, after her father dies, chooses to go to work in the city and seek an education rather than go to live on a farm with her brother and his wife. It's quite old-fashioned, but in a charming way, with a sweet, wholesome heroine and a nice romance. Not gonna lie, from the description, I did get kind of a Phantom-y vibe from it. The one thing that she splurges on is a season ticket to the symphony, and a stranger begins leaving roses on her seat every night. I got Phantom-y vibes from that, and I immediately wondered, ooh, is this gonna be that kind of story? It isn't at all, and that's fine. That was perfectly alright. It's a very pleasant and quick read. The only thing that kind of drove me crazy was that the two characters who cause a lot of trouble for our protagonist never really get any comeuppance. She forgives them for their mistreatment of her, and all is well, and I just feel like, ugh! No, I want something. I want some justice. Of course, if she didn't do that, then the whole message of turning the other cheek and loving and forgiving your enemies would be lost. But, I would have struggled with it so much more than she does. So there you have it. Those are all the books that I had to talk about today. I am currently rereading an old favorite. Not sure if I should tell you what it is or not. It's a kid's book, and the main character is a mouse, a lady mouse. I'll be reviewing that for you shortly. Till then, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye! Whoa, that was really squeaky.